Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 3 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles. As well, you can pre-order now the all-electric Cadillac Lyriq or the all-electric Silverado as well. Give them a call at 519-824-0210. Tell them that Chris Palme, aka CDP, sent you as well. And also, guys, the parts and service department right now is open on Saturdays at Barry Cullen Chevrolet from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. I'm assuming through the Christmas season as well. Again, I want to say thank you to Barry Cullen Chevrolet for sponsoring Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. Guys, I'm looking forward to my guest today. He's going to be on his record 6th appearance. His name is Pat Gregoire. He's a manager with Coolbet Canada, and he's a color analyst for the National Lacrosse League's Halifax Thunderbird and the TSN Game of the Week as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Pat. I know he's also a big Blue Jays and Bills fan, but I'm just so glad the National Lacrosse League's back. And as you guys can see, I have my Bandits hat on and the Buffalo Bandits in the background, but I am a fan of the sport. And so is Pat, and he's the gentleman that I'm going to bring on right now. Good afternoon, Pat. How you doing?
Doing good, Chris. The Bandits black and orange looks good on you, buddy.
Well, thank you. Hey, I'm also a huge fan of the entire league as well, and I had such a great time Saturday night in Buffalo, even though they lost 11-10.
Yeah, it's very odd seeing the Bandits lose at home. They have had such an unbelievable record at home in front of Bandit land. I think it was just under 12,000 for the attendance, which is awesome. For a December game. Usually it takes a little while for some of the fans to get back into the building around the holidays, but it was an electric crowd, and you guys were treated to quite the game. I know the Bandits didn't come out with a win, but man, that Albany team certainly put a lot of people on notice that they're not going to be a walkover this year. And that kind of goes to show the state of the NLL right now. It's not quite any given Sunday, if you will, but man, I think we're going to see a lot of parity this year.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Doug Jamieson, to me, was the number one star. He made 42 saves. Buffalo did pepper him. And Tanner Thompson had 2 goals, 5 assists. And Nanacote had 3 goals for the Bandits, but he unfortunately got thrown out for starting a fight. Now, there's a couple of rule things I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
I know they're really strict with goaltending infractions like the NHL did for a year or two, and then they scrapped it. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is the goaltender interference. In hockey, it's a 2-minute penalty. Why is it 5 minutes in the National Lacrosse League?
So it's all discretionary with the contact and how excessive it is. So if it's deemed an excessive hit, and I mean, you got to think, Chris, in hockey, there is some plays where you're crashing the net, but in lacrosse, we see more crease dives and action around the net. So it's just in place to protect the goaltender, similar to what we see, maybe not to as much as a scale as the NFL with protecting the quarterbacks. But certainly they want to protect the goalies because there is a lot of action. So they deemed that it was a 5-minute penalty with Nanacoke crashing into the crease. And then unfortunately, with him fighting, it was the 2 majors in the game that caused him to get ejected. So if you have 2 majors in the game, that's where you're gone. And of course, Nanacoke's not thinking of that, where there's the goaltender interference and then, there's a fight that happens, that's not in the back of your mind as a fiery competitor. You're not thinking, oh, that's my second major, I can't fight right now. It's just kind of heat of the moment. And unfortunately for the Bandits, I did think that kind of shifted some momentum, because offensively they started to look a little bit better. And I thought Nanticoke was certainly their most dynamic forward, with Dane Smith not having as great as a game as we normally see. And I thought Albany, kudos to them, kudos to Doug Jamieson. They really clamped down on some of the Bandits playmakers, but Nanticoke was great. Unfortunately for him, though, the two majors caused him to get tossed, and ultimately, like you said it, and Dave Jamieson was the big time difference maker in that game. And a play like that, I think, also kind of changed the way the outcome possibly could have happened. So again, I saw the Bandit land, reading some of the comments on their Facebook page. Guys, I know you're passionate. I love how passionate Bandit land is. But it's not time to hit the panic button. Matt Vince will be fine. He's one of the greatest goaltenders to ever play the game. I know it wasn't his best effort. He's going to be fine. This Bandits team is going to be fine. And I wouldn't be worried too much. It's just one game, right?
Absolutely. That lower bowl was sold out pretty well, and there was some people sitting in the 300 levels. Now, Chris Swenson, they're a PA announcer, and I've had him on my show. I was able to speak to him at halftime, and he goes, well, we still would like to see more. And I said, well, for opening night, 13,000 is still a very good start compared to last year during the pandemic.
Exactly. And I think you saw last year, obviously, the numbers weren't a true representation of what attendance was like around the National Lacrosse League. I mean, you look at Toronto, they played 2 games in Hamilton with 0 fans. I know Halifax played a couple of games where they had limited capacity. Hamilton, Toronto, they had limited capacity. Buffalo, I think 1 game was limited. And then even though, you know, the Buffaloes, the Philadelphia, some of the other teams in the States maybe didn't have as many restrictions as, let's say, some of the Canadian teams had. But with that being said, there was people who were reluctant to go back into big crowds, and I totally understand that. But you know, it's starting to seem like we're, you know, on the right end of things. We're starting to see some of these bigger events, and look no further than Buffalo. Anytime you go to a Bandits game, doesn't matter if it's, you know, 12,000 or what we saw in the playoffs where they sold out. Like, they come out, they support their team, they're passionate, and yeah, sometimes maybe a bit too passionate when they're throwing off some hot takes in the Facebook comment section and worried about what's going on with their team. But I would rather have a team that is over passionate and worried than a fan base that really doesn't care. So it just goes to show you how much this Bandits fan base loves their sports teams, especially a team like the Buffalo Bandits.
They're also missing a couple guys from last year's team. I guess Brown now is no longer there. Connor Fields is now in Rochester. And Steve Priola, who's one of their key defensive guys, he was last minute scratched. And I'm not sure if he was injured or something happened with him there.
Yeah, I haven't heard all too much about Priolo being that last minute scratch, hoping it's nothing. He wasn't put on the IR. He wasn't put on the pup list. So a little cause for concern there, I think, for Bandit fans. Maybe it was a sickness. I know there's some crazy bugs going around right now. He's a fierce competitor, though. If he was ready to go, or even close to being ready to go, he would have wanted to be in that game. So that's something, obviously, we got to keep our eyes close to see what's going on with Steve Priolo. But certainly, they definitely missed him. This guy is a perennial elite defender year in, year out. I actually don't think he gets the praise that he deserves. Like, I think at this point in his career, he probably should have won a Defender of the Year award. It's just unfortunate for him. He's gone up against some elite all-time talent, like a guy like Kyle Rubish in Saskatchewan, Graham Hossack in Halifax, where it's just been unfortunate for him. But year in, year out, Priolo is going to be one of the most impact defenders, and he just continues to get better and better with age. He is a guy that they certainly missed, not just from a defensive standpoint, but I think they missed his leadership. They missed him being that calming presence on the net, on the bench, being on the floor, talking to Matt Vince, kind of going over strategy. It's almost like having an extra coach out on the floor and out on the bench when you have a veteran presence like Steve Priolo. So hopefully for Bandit fans, it was nothing serious, and he's going to be back for next game, because you nailed it, Chris. You could tell there was just something off with that Bandits team without him in the lineup.
They did get off to a good start, 1-0, and then Albany went up 4-1. Every time the Bandits would fall behind 2, 3, 4 goals, they would make a push and get it back to even, but they could never take the lead. They only had the 1-0 lead once, and that was it. And they were just basically behind the 8 ball the entire game most of the night.
Yeah, it really kind of just goes to show you, yes, it wasn't their night. They didn't play to the expectations that I think they had. And I think if you asked John Tavares, he would have said, they should have had a better effort. But I think you also got to tip your cap to Albany. They had such a great game plan. Even hearing Josh Byrne after the game just saying they were throwing different things defensively, like inviting them to get beat underneath and allowing those shots from the outside and kind of inviting them to attack and to engage, and that's not something that you normally see. So you got to give a lot of credit to Glenn Clark and Clem Durazio of the coaching staff for Albany. They played a great game plan, and again, we've said it already a few times here, but Doug Jamieson was lights out. This is a guy that in the COVID shortened season back in 2020 was the goaltender of the year. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but this is a guy that night in, night out, if he's in between the pipes, he can steal games for you.
Also, when Albany was up 11-10 after Chris Colucci cut it to 1 goal with about a minute left, the last 30 seconds, the Bandits, I think, took possession of the ball, but Albany did a great job tying them up. And basically, the last 27 seconds, 28 seconds, they were stuck in their own end, and that basically sealed the deal there. They were smart about how to not let the Bandits break out and to have that opportunity to tie the game up.
Yeah, it was a masterclass, really. And again, I mentioned how well of a game plan that Glenn Clark had for this Albany team. And that's what they're going to have to do this year. I know, they put up 11 goals, and you mentioned Tanner Thompson having a career game with 7 points, and some other guys, Connor Kelly with a big night with 5 points. Kieran McCardle had 5 points as well. In his first game, John Piatelli, 3 points. Like there was a lot of young guys that stepped up and played a big role offensively for this Albany team. But to be quite honest, I don't see a lot of output for this offense. I think they're a team that's going to score by committee. There's not going to be 1 or 2 players that are going to take over that offense. Ethan Walker, I forgot to mention him on the left side there, one of their top lefties as well. But I think they're a team that's going to be built from the back end, and it starts with their goalie. It starts with their defense. They're big, they're fast, they're tenacious, but they play a really sound defensive system. So for me, I truly do believe, we're going to see some strong offensive games like what we saw. And again, 11 goals is I mean, look across the league. We saw Toronto put 19 up, or 8, and then we saw. I think it was 18 from Halifax, another 18 or 19 from Saskatchewan. So offense was certainly at a premium. Scoring wasn't at a premium, I should say, on Saturday and Friday. But this game was more of a defensive battle. But I think that's the style of game that Albany is going to want to play this year. And that's kind of the way that I think it's a recipe for success. Now, for the Bandits, that's not their game. Yeah, they have a great defense, and Matt Vince is still an elite goaltender, in my opinion, despite only having 27 saves on Saturday night. But they want to be in that run and gun game. They want to be in the high scoring games. You want Dane Smith to have 7-8 points at the end of the game. You want Togan Aniko crashing the crease, electrifying Banditland. Josh Byrne with his crease dive. So yeah, certainly not the way that the Bandits wanted to start their season, but I'm not hitting the panic button with this team. At the end of the year, they're going to be either first, second, or even third in the East. They're going to be battling deep into the playoffs. Like, this is just a team that hasn't been able to get over the hump yet, Chris, but they've always been there. That's 2 years in a row now that they've fallen in the NLL Cup. Like, I think this is a team that is destined and hungry for a championship. And if they don't get it done this year, I mean, I would not be surprised to see Steve Dietrich, the general manager of this Bandits team, do something big and trade one of their top guys to kind of try to shake things up, because It's been high expectations for this group, and as it should, because there is so much talent on that front door there, and they have a small window with a guy like Matt Vince, who is, near the end of his career, right? He's not getting any younger. So the window is closing. And I think this year is an opportunity to finally get that championship that they haven't had in quite some time in Buffalo.
Yeah, 2008 was the last time they won, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, they are. I mean, when you think of the NLL, you think of winning, you think of perennial powers. The Toronto Rock come to mind, obviously, with their dynasty in the early 2000s. You think of Philly back with their great teams in the 90s and in the early 2000s as well. But the Bandits, again, another team that year in, year out, they are one of the top teams, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump. And when you talk to Dane Smith, which I had an opportunity to talk to him a lot last year, he said, like, there's nothing more that he wants to do than bring an NLL Cup to Buffalo, hang another banner up in that arena. That this is a guy that has, multiple MVPs, scoring titles, records for most points in a single season, records for assists in a single season. A guy that's probably going to be on the top 10 in every single offensive category when all is said and done, and be it a Hall of Famer. But he could care less about that, Chris. He wants a championship, and a lot of guys in that locker room do want one. And I think it's a make or break year with this core. If they don't get it done, something is going to have to give. And I'm not saying they're going to blow everything up, because there's just too much talent. But when it gets to a point where you haven't been able to get over that hump, you got to make a decision here. And I think this is the year for them to get it done, or start thinking about retooling this roster.
It just shows you how hard it is to win a championship in any sport, And I think there's similarities to this team with the Bills as well, because right now the Bills are to win now, and just like the Bandits. So I think it's a huge season for both teams. And one thing I like what the Bandits do there, even though I'm not a Bills fan, they get the Bills fight song in there. They bring a player in or two, and it gets the crowd jacked up even more. And Chris Swenson does a great job as the in-game public address announcer as well.
Oh, Chris is one of the best in the biz. He really knows how to feed off that energy, and he's so great. And he kind of was, Chris, like when you go around and you'll have an opportunity. I know you've been in Hamilton, you've seen a game, but once you get to some of these other buildings, a lot of the PA announcers kind of take a little bit away from what Chris does, and they do put their own flavor on it. But he was really the first guy to really engage the home crowd team with those chants, the what's he's got, nothing. Like, and now teams across the league use that phrase. And he has so many great ones over the years, back obviously when I can remember going to games when I was down at school in Buffalo. The Johnny T chants, like, the guy had so many one-liners. He still does. But you're totally right. And that's the unique thing about lacrosse and about the NLL. It's a party atmosphere. The PA announcers talking, during the game. There's music playing. You got the dance team. You've got so many different things going on besides just the product that's on the floor. But the product on the floor is so good as well. Like, it really is. And I know I'm biased. I know you've become quite the fan of the NLL, but talking about like bang for your buck night out, like, I don't think there is a better in-game, in-person experience than a National Lacrosse League game, especially in those awesome buildings, like Buffalo. Like, the Bandit Land certainly knows how to do it right.
Before I get into some questions, I wanted to ask you also about the timeout situation during a game, and how many challenges can coaches do? And one thing I learned during a game, the coach can throw a red flag during the play. Like in other sports, they have to wait to a stoppage, but in the lacrosse league, they can do it right on the fly.
Yeah, so I believe in... This is something I probably should know, and this is why, as a broadcaster, you should always brush up on your rule book. But I do believe the coach's challenge, if you use your challenge, and you're successful with it, you get that challenge back. If you miss, then that's when it's a delay of game penalty, and then you lose that challenge. So you definitely have to be pretty selective with when you challenge it. And of course, it's all about timing as well, when you can throw it. So that's why they allow you to throw the flag during play, because there is a time window. I believe it's 2 minutes or a minute and 30 seconds before it becomes too late to watch it. And of course, in Buffalo, and this is gamesmanship, they do this everywhere. But for example, if there's a close call, Buffalo's obviously going to get a couple of looks on the replay to kind of see, all right, is it close? Yeah, we want to throw our flag. It should throw the challenge flag. Whereas if you're on the road, you're not going to get as many replays on the Jumbotron. So that's where you have to rely on, if you have a video coach that's on the bench, because the iPad that can go back. And man, I tell you, Chris, it is such a hard sport in real time to decide if it's a goal or if it's not a goal, especially when it comes to the crease rule. Like the crease rule is, and there's so many different variations. And, whenever I do my prep for a broadcast, at the start of the year, especially, I always go back and read the different crease rules, because there are so many different interpretations. And I give the refs a lot of credit. I know it's a difficult job, and I know they take a lot of flack, and sometimes it's deserved. But at the end of the day, when it comes to calling a lacrosse game with all the different rules and how fast it moves, it is such a hard game to be an official, because a lot of the rules are subjective. It's a lot of like the way that you can interpret the rule. So I would say, and I know John Gertler will agree with me, I know he's a friend of the program, I think there's got to be a time limit on some of these reviews. Sometimes it takes far too long to review. And really, if it's that close, it should just be inconclusive evidence. When you have to break it down multiple, and I get it, the officials, they want the right call, and that's the right thing to do. But when you have such a fast-paced product like lacrosse, and you have such a long review where it's 3-4 minutes, and you're breaking down just for a centimeter of a guy's toe inside the crease, I think that's where it's inconclusive evidence, and you go with whatever the ruling was on the floor. So I know that is something that the league is working on, implementing something like that, and implementing similar to what they have in the National Hockey League with, they've got headquarters in Toronto, and that's one person, a team, I should say, is looking at the replay. Don't know if it's something exactly, if that they go to that, or if they have their own standardized viewing screen where they can look back and the ref can control all the different angles. Of course, it's just at the point where not every single arena, not every broadcast crew has the same capability. So until each arena in the NLL has the same equal playing field when it comes to angles and reviews and the technology from that standpoint, it's hard to put a time limit on. But I certainly, as not even a broadcaster, as someone who consumes the game, that would be my one issue is the reviews sometimes can just be way too long, and it takes the flow out of the game for a game that is just so beautiful. That's back and forth, quick action.
Also, the fans there weren't too happy as well, and the delays were, I would say, between 3 and 4 minutes, quite a bit. And the Bandits did have 2 goals disallowed. But one thing I got to ask you, Pat, if your toe is even on that white line, no goal, right? Am I correct?
Yeah. So basically, with the rule with the crease is if as long as, so if you're in the air, and say, let's say Josh Byrne, for example, because he's so good at this, takes flight, jumps up in the crease, he breaks the plane, that's fine. It's whenever the ball crosses the crease. So if the ball crosses the crease, then he lands and his foot is on the turf, it's a good goal. But if he takes off and his foot is just touching that crease, it is no goal. So it's about where the foot plants, when that foot plants, in terms of where the ball is at that point as well. Also, another thing that is a very point of contention as well is the ball carrier or the person who touched the ball. If say a player runs through that crease and then picks up the ball, that's a crease violation. But if a player runs through the crease, another player picks up that ball, there's no crease violation. As long as the person who runs through that crease doesn't pick up the ball first, gains possession, then it's fair game. And this is why there's so many different variations of the rule. Sometimes as well, if someone is pushed into the crease, then that's also discretionary of the ref, similar to also when it goes to goaltender interference. So again, just so many different variations of rules and interpretation. And when it's at that high speed, it's so difficult on the officials to get the get the call right properly. So that's why, 9 times out of 10, if it's a close play at the crease, you're going to see a coach probably throw a flag, or the ref is going to blow things down and wants to take a look at it because it's just such a fast-paced game.
One thing I also noticed at this game too, there was a lot of new fans at the KeyBank Center, and I saw a lot of families with young kids there as well. And I was there at 6 o'clock at the arena, around 6 o'clock or 1:45, and there was people lined up to get into the arena. And I've been to Sabre games too at the KeyBank Center, and to me, the Bandit fans are louder and noisier and more engaged than the Sabre fans are.
Oh, I totally agree. I think they are, when you talk about the best fans in the NLL, I mean, they are certainly up there. And when you talk about the best fans, in pro sports, they've got to be up there as well. And I know they probably don't have the big fan base globally or even in the city as a maybe a Bandits, or sorry, a Bills or Sabres, but they're passionate. They are so passionate. You talk about the new fans as well too. That's a big part. I talk about the party atmosphere and how engaging the fans are, but it's also a great spot, to take your family, to go with kids. Like it is a family. I know there is that party vibe to it, but it's also a really, really good time, to bring the family, bring, kids out, nephews, nieces, whatever it may be. It's an awesome time. And especially a lot of these teams do a great job with 1 or 2 games a year where it's like an afternoon game and they kind of have like their kids' nights. I know the Toronto Rock are doing one this year. I think the Bandits usually do one as well.
Not
a lot
this
of teams
year.
do.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not
Yeah.
doing it this year.
No,
Okay.
no, I checked their schedule, and a lot of their games are on Saturday nights, and they have, I think, 2 games at home on Friday nights. Halifax on the 30th, and then there's another game on a Friday night. But all their games, I believe, are 7:30 this year.
You know what? That's although the 1 or 2 trade-offs for those afternoon games are great for, bringing out kids. I think from a television standpoint and from a gate standpoint, those Saturday night games are prime time. Like the Toronto Rock, a big reason why they moved to Hamilton was arena availability. Like they were getting screwed at Scotiabank Arena. A lot of Friday nights, a lot of Sunday afternoons, a lot of Saturday afternoons, and not that prime time on Saturday night. Of course, they're competing against the Leafs. They're competing against the Raptors, concerts. So they felt like, especially in Hamilton, Saturday night, you're not dealing with traffic coming on a Friday, because that was a big reason why a lot of people either wouldn't go to Rock games in Toronto. You're dealing with traffic. If for the people that are working in the city, on a Friday night, the last thing they want to do is stay in the city, and they want to get home to their family, whatever it may be. So as much as I think it would be great that the NLL has a team, in Toronto, one of the biggest markets in North America, I totally understand why Jamie Dawick wanted to have a better arena deal and go to a market like Hamilton. And I think it's gone. I mean, I'm sure we'll probably get to it, but outside of next year and possibly the year after, where they might have some uncertainty where they're going to play, after year 1 in a game, I think this move to Hamilton has been an absolute home run.
I agree, and I admit I was wrong about it a year ago. We spoke about it on this show, and I was completely wrong about it. I was going to wait till later to ask you this question, Pat, but since we brought it up, I have to ask you it now. Thoughts on the Rock having to relocate for 2 years from the First Ontario Center as they're doing renovations, and where do you think the Rock possibly could possibly relocate temporarily?
Oh man, Chris, this really it does stink. I think long term it will be okay for the Rock and for Jamie Dowick and his franchise, because from everything that I'm hearing, the facelifts and the renovations that they're going to do for First Ontario Center is going to be beautiful. They're going to have more luxury suites. The concourse is going to be improved. So it's going to be a really long-term project. It's going to be great, not just for, the Rock, but for the Bulldogs, for the Honey Badgers, I believe,
They
the
moved. They
basketball team.
moved. They
Oh, they
actually
did move.
moved.
See, well,
They
I'm
moved.
not surprised. I'm
Yeah.
not surprised.
Yeah.
They don't have a home for 2 years potentially. But even just the city, it just allows, some more concerts to come, some more events to come. And like, it is a great thing for the city of Hamilton. But now I'm going to flip side onto the negatives here. Now you have a team that is new in market, that just came to Hamilton, and as you and I know, didn't start off on the greatest foot. A lot of people were not pleased that they didn't change their name to Hamilton, or they didn't change it to Ontario, that they were Toronto. But once they came to market, once people saw the game, once they went to the game, they fell in love. And now the fact that they're going to have 2 seasons and then 2 seasons removed, like, I don't know how many people are going to come back to Hamilton after 2 seasons away. I think that's why it's important. We'll get to your second part of the question, is that they stay somewhere close to Hamilton. So people who are, new or newer fans from last year or this year will go to games next year. I don't think you can go back to Toronto. I really don't believe that you can go to Coca-Cola Coliseum, although I think that would be an awesome venue for an NLL team. I just don't think you can do it. So in terms of where I think they could land, I'm hearing rumblings of the Odd in Kitchener, hearing rumblings of possibly the Meridian Center in St. Catharines, possibly Guelph. The arenas that, of course, you're not going to get an arena as big as First Ontario Center, but it's going to have at least 5,000 to 6,000. Likely, I think of those, I think the Odd is the biggest at
7,200.
Yeah, 72. I was going to say. Yep. So it's just about 7,200. So that would allow you probably to have the most fans. The Meridian Center obviously is a newer building. It's beautiful. It's in an area where there's traditional lacrosse fans. It's a hotbed. Like, there is a lot of great players that have come from the St. Catharines area. Most notably, while we were talking about the Bandits, Matt Mintz, he's from there. So there's a lot of players. There's a lot of history with lacrosse in St. Catharines. So that kind of would make sense. You'd have a lot of opportunity for people coming over from Buffalo to watch some games. It's relatively close enough for people from Hamilton to drive down as well. Obviously, if it's a Saturday night game, that's great because you don't have to deal with traffic. If it's a Friday night game, that's going to be a headache for people from Hamilton to get to St. Catharines. But I think that's a great location. It's tough. It really is tough. I don't envy the Toronto Rock and the front office staff who's going to have to choose where to play. I heard, some people throw out the idea of doing multiple locations, which would be really cool if you went to different hotbeds and different areas in Ontario. Like, go to Peterborough for a game, go to Oshawa for a game, go to Guelph for a game. But at the end of the day, you have to still build that fan base, and you have to allow your season ticket holders to have the opportunity to go to every game. So as cool and as great as that would be from a marketing standpoint and growing the game across the province and allowing maybe the league to see some other areas where that could possibly support an NLL team, I think they need to find a permanent home for the next 2 years. And I think it's got to be close to Hamilton, because you do not want to lose some of those new fans that you've built over the last 2 seasons.
I was going to suggest London, but London's about an hour and a half drive from Hamilton, depending on traffic. Now, Guelph has the Sleeman Center, but it only seats about 5,000. And to me, I as much as I'd like to see it in Guelph or Kitchener, Niagara would make the most sense at the Meridian Center. The only question is they wouldn't be the first tenant in that arena. The Ice Dogs would have the priority on their home games still.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, which is another, tenfold of what you have to deal with is you had such a great opportunity and a great relationship with the building, with the First Ontario Center, and also with the Bulldogs. They had a great working relationship building out their schedules. Now, where do you go? It's really unfortunate that they're handed this, but again, the Rock have been a world class franchise for many years. I think they'll figure out where the best location is, and I hope wherever they land, whether it's Kitchener, whether it's St. Catharines, wherever, I hope people from Hamilton still travel and support the team. And I hope whoever is the city of home for the next couple of years embrace them and really help support, because it's an unfortunate situation that I don't think the Rock envisioned. I truly don't believe they would have moved to Hamilton last year if they knew this was going to happen. It sounds like the project was a little bit bigger than what they anticipated and was going to take a little bit longer. It sounded, what I was told initially was that it was going to be done in phases and they were going to be able to do majority of the work over the summer. But after a couple initial quotes and figure things out, they said it would take far too long if they would segment it, and they need to just get it done and over with. So long term, it's great for the Rock. It's great for the city of Hamilton. Short term, it really, really does stink for both, especially the Rock, who built such great positive momentum off of last year, and they're going to build even more this year. It's just what's going to now happen next year and probably 2 years, it sounds like.
And that arena, I remember when it first opened on November 30th, 1985, 37 years ago. I'm dating myself, but they haven't really done much to that arena other than the 100 level seats. It's been pretty well the same arena for 37 years.
Yeah, and it's a great venue. It really is. There's not really a bad seat in the house, and it needs a facelift, especially that you're going to have a premier OHL team who, continuing year after year, proving that they are one of the top teams in the OHL. And then of course a professional lacrosse team. And as I mentioned before, if they can give this a nice facelift, I know there are a lot of great concerts that do come to town, but it's only going to attract more concerts, more events, different things of that nature. And it's long overdue. Like you said, it's unfortunate that it's coming at this time.
Are you still good for time yet, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Time wise? Okay. I just wanted to double check with you. This question I wanted to ask you at the beginning, but I wanted to get that one through. What was it like being back with TSN for their game of the week, along with John Abbott and Ashley Dawkins? And thoughts on the Halifax win over Philadelphia? I think it was 19-8. I got it wrong there at 18-8.
Well, first, before we get into this, Chris, that's exactly that's what you're supposed to do. You listen to what your interviewee is saying, and sometimes you got to pivot, right? So that was good on you for recognizing that. That's awesome. Now, being back in Halifax, couldn't have been happier. It was so great to be back in that building, around that fan base, and it helped that the home team came out with a big win. You were correct; it was 18-8,
Okay.
massive victory for the T-Birds. Obviously, I get to see them quite a bit, also doing the TSN.ca home games. I was expecting a little bit more from Philly. I'll be honest. Bringing in Joe Resetarits, a MVP candidate last year, just did not anticipate them coming out as flat. I think they'll be able to bounce back, and they'll be a team that is fighting for a playoff spot. But going back to Halifax, man, adding Randy Stotts and Ryan Benesh to that offense just completely changes the dynamic. I truly believe that Stotts has the capability to be an MVP this year. He looked so good. He had 7 points. I know there's a couple other guys that have more points than him, but he's that floor general. It was great to see. From a broadcast standpoint, yeah, of course, John and myself would have loved to have a little bit of a closer game. But even though it was a blowout, it just still was it was such an entertaining game. It's not for a lack of chances that Philadelphia couldn't score. It's just, Halifax defense played really well, and Warren Hill, anytime that defense broke down, he came up huge. So it was great to be back with John and Ashley. Both of them are such pros. John calls an unbelievable game, whether it's the NHL or the NLL. He is a true pros pro, and Ashley does such great work on the sidelines, whether she's interviewing players or coaches, but all the hard work that she does during the week and weeks leading up to each game, talking to players, doing her prep, finding those unique stories that not everyone can find, and adding that human element to it. It's awesome. She does a great job, and it just makes our broadcast that much better. I really enjoy working with those two. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait for my next TSN.ca game, where I'm going to be able to work with my shotgun rider, Pete Dalladay, who does an unreal job as well. And we have a new sideline reporter this year, Mackie Jenner, who I'm really excited to work with. She's one of the young budding stars of lacrosse media, and she's going to do an awesome job on the sideline for us this year.
I wish I could have watched that game Friday night, but I was doing camera work for the University of Guelph Griffins that night. But one thing I want to give a shout out to is the camera operators and the guys who operate the graphics and do the audio as well. It's really, truly a team effort for a broadcast.
Oh, I mean, if it wasn't for you guys behind the scenes, we wouldn't be on air. You guys are the ones that really, really are the stars of the show. We just show up, put our headsets on. Sure, we do our prep during the week, but you guys are there a lot earlier, setting up the truck, getting everything ready, whether it's graphics or camera operators, stats, audio. Like, I don't think people realize how much goes into a broadcast, especially. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a university broadcast or a TSN broadcast. Like, there is so much that goes into it. But when you're dealing with a TSN broadcast, like, you go into that truck and the amount of people that are in there, and they all have their one specific job. And if one person's not doing their job, I mean, it completely can change the outcome of the broadcast. It's very similar to a team atmosphere in a game, right? Like, Bill Belichick says it all the time: do your job and don't worry about the outcome. If you take care of what you need to do, the results will follow. And that's exactly what it is when it comes to a broadcast as well.
And I've seen it with Rogers TV and with Griff Vision as well. And like I said, I'm now learning how to do replay, do the scoreboard graphics. So the more I just want to continue to keep learning and keep doing more and more, because I think that's important in media now. Even if you want to go into radio, the more you can do, the more of an asset you become.
1000%. It is, the industry is changing, and it's ever changing. And if you can become more marketable and you can learn more things and you have more tools in your toolkit, you're just going to become more hireable, and there's going to be more opportunities coming for you. The days of a one-trick pony in media is no longer. I mean, sure, you have people that have been established in the industry forever, but now if you want to break through, the more skills that you have, the better. If you can write, that's great. If you can do some play-by-play, that's awesome. If you can do stuff behind the scenes, like doing camera or even editing in some reporting, whatever it is, the more you can do, the better. And what I always say to anyone who asks for advice on how to break into the industry or anything like that, I just say try everything, because you won't know if you like something unless you try it. And if you don't like it, that doesn't mean you have to do it anymore. At least you gave it a try. But let's say if you try doing graphics and never done it before, you might find out, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, or I really like this. So I always say, try everything, because you never know what might be a hidden talent. And again, those guys that are in the truck, they've worked hard for many years, and they are traveling all over the place. Like, the people that are working on our TSN show are the same guys that are working on, an NHL show, or, working for the Raptor. Like, it is a very tight knit community. So if you work your way up behind the scenes, there are some great opportunities and some great people that you can work with. And that's one thing I will say, Chris, the people that you meet in this industry, they are just top notch, always so nice and so willing to help. That's what one of my favorite things is, coming in and out of these games, whether it's in Halifax or Hamilton or Buffalo. the people are just great, and everyone wants to just have a great show and have fun while doing it. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it is work, but you're at a live event, helping a broadcast
Yeah,
go to air. That's pretty cool. It's we're
it
really
is.
lucky.
It is, and I really enjoy it. And I still get a little bit nervous when I do camera at the beginning or graphics or replay. But once the game starts, I'm just completely focused on my task and the broadcast, making it as best to be a part of the broadcast is. I should word this better. Just being a part of the team and being part of a live broadcast, I really enjoy it.
You know what, Chris? Nerves aren't a bad thing, because if you don't have nerves, or you're not excited, or you don't have those pregame jitters, it probably means you don't care. And if you don't care, that's an issue. Like myself, yeah, sure, I'm not as nervous going on air as I once was, when I first started doing some of these games, or even, at school volunteering, for different school broadcasts or whatever it may be. But you still get that little rush at the start of the game. You still feel like a little bit of butterflies while you hear your producer and you're counting you down until you're opening. And when that goes away, Chris, that means that, I shouldn't be doing this anymore, because I do honestly feel so lucky and so honored to be able to bring the NLL to people's living rooms each and every week on TSN and TSN.ca and ESPN too, which again, it's been a few times now, but pretty cool. I still always have a little bit of a smile on my face when I see that there's one of our games going to ESPN. Never would have thought that would have been a thing with lacrosse, but here we are, man. This game has grown quite a bit.
This league also reminds me a little bit about the CFL, and that's why I like it. It's really a fans league, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why I like the CFL. But I see similarities between both leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a fans league. It's a gate driven league. Yeah, sure. You know what? TSN and ESPN, those deals are awesome for growing fans. But at the end of the day, in order for the league to survive, and not just survive, but thrive, is getting butts in the seats. And I will say it, my producers and might not like it, but to get the ultimate experience, yeah, it's great to listen to us and watch us on a broadcast, but to get the true NLL experience, you got to be in that building, man. It is such a great show. And as obviously you've been to a few games now, you really feel it. You feel like it is just such a cool experience. It's such a great vibe. Fans are great. And I couldn't agree more. Like you talk to players, they know how important the fans are, the heartbeat of this league.
And that's why I really like this league. It's the same with the CFL as well. And when I go to a lacrosse game, there's some sporting events. Sometimes you look at your watch. Never looked at my watch once, and I was even telling some of the fans, I'm just hoping this game will go to overtime and stuff like that. It's just I wanted overtime.
The only thing better than lacrosse, Chris, is free lacrosse and more lacrosse. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you fall in love with the game, but I tell everyone all the time, if they haven't seen a game or haven't gone to a game, it just takes one. Once you see it, I promise you, I absolutely promise you that you will love the game. And if you don't have fun, I'll buy your ticket back, because I know you're not only going to enjoy yourself, you're going to be looking at the schedule and seeing when's the next game you can go to, or the next game that you can watch on TSN.
This leads to my next question. Overall thoughts on the first full week of the National Lacrosse League. Were there some surprises, some upsets, and some teams that you just really were like surprised about?
So my first overall thoughts, I will say, is I did not expect that offensive explosion. Normally what we see in the first couple of weeks, similar to a lot of sports like the NFL, the NBA, it takes a while for the offense to click. And usually you'll see the defenses start to thrive. But, we had 18 goals scored by Halifax, 19 by Toronto. There was almost 30 just under 29 goals scored in between San Diego and New York. Rochester had 16. Saskatchewan scored 18. So, like, the offenses were absolutely dialed in week one. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is that a lot of these offenses are already in mid-season form. Some upsets or some things that were surprises. I certainly think Albany knocking off Buffalo was a shock. I knew Albany was going to be a team that's tough to play against, and they always play really well against Buffalo. But I was not anticipating them not only winning, but keeping the Bandits down to just 10 goals. I thought they would have been one of those teams, in the mid-teens or even closer to 20. Rochester, I picked Georgia to win, but I thought that was going to be a closer game. I really did not see them scoring 16 goals, but that just goes to show you the offensive boost that Connor Fields brings to that lineup. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He feels like he should have been protected, in that expansion draft, and he was selected by Vegas, but then Vegas traded him to Rochester, and he felt like he should have been protected by Buffalo. So he's got a chip on his shoulder now, playing for a rival of the team that he grew up loving and playing. And he was a ball boy for the Bandits. I don't think a lot of people know that. He's from the Western New York area. So he's a guy that, obviously very upset that he was taken, but he's happy to be in Rochester. And I mean, how could he not? He absolutely lit the world on fire last week. Saskatchewan, I will say, I'll toot my own horn. I did pick them to beat the defending champions, but I did not think they were going to blow them out by 12 goals. Like, I think Saskatchewan's a team. They had a down year last year, didn't make the playoffs, which it seemed like in a million years, but they're back. The offense looks great. The defense is always stout in Saskatchewan, and bringing in Alex Bouquet, if he could play solid all year long, like, this Saskatchewan team is a team that could compete for a championship.
Since you were mentioning this, I had to ask you this as well. Expansion team. Obviously, the leagues now has 15 teams, 8 in the East, 7 in the West. I haven't had an opportunity to see Vegas's first game yet. I should look into that. But where are some possibilities for this league? Is there? Obviously, they want to get it to a balanced league at 16 teams, 8 each. To me, Seattle, we brought this up, I think, last year. Seattle, to me, should be a strong consideration for a lacrosse expansion team.
Yeah, I think Seattle certainly would be a no-brainer for an opportunity of maybe somewhere that the NLL could expand to. They've got a new building. Of course, it all matters about ownership. Is there a group that's interested in bringing an NL team to Seattle? It would make a lot of sense. You could build a rivalry with Vancouver. But I agree with you. I think it has to be another team out west to have that balance of 8 and 8. And I think once they get to 8 and 8, I think they honestly will stick at 16 teams for a few years, make sure the league is stable, make sure all the teams, are thriving. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be some relocations, but I think in terms of expansion, they'll go with one more. And listening to Brett Freud, one of the new commissioner of the NLL, I've had conversations with him, but I was listening to one of the podcasts that he was on this week, and he's not overly, pushing for getting that 16th team. He would rather it come organically. Like, of course, it's something on their radar, but it's not something that it's got to be the right ownership group. It's got to be the right, destination. And to kind of go back to the question that you had was, where could it be? Well, Edmonton certainly would be somewhere where I think they would be open to go back to. I think they would need to have ownership, possibly with the Edmonton Oilers in that new building. I know that is something that is of interest that I'm hearing rumblings of that could be there. Minnesota, getting a team back in Minnesota, whether it's, in St. Paul, at the XL or Energy. I think that would be a great spot. They had a smaller fan base, but it was a passionate fan base. There's still a lot of people, championing for them to get their team back. Winnipeg is another opportunity. The only issue with Winnipeg is that arena is very busy during the winter. So it would be tough for them to find nights to play in. But I think they would embrace that. There's a lot of great growth in Manitoba lacrosse at the grassroots level, at the junior level. We're seeing more players being drafted to the NLL from there. So that would be a pretty good spot. But yeah, those would be the locations that I think we would probably see with expansion. And then once they get to 16, maybe we see some relocation in the East. I know there's a lot of appetite for possibly a team in Montreal or Ottawa, but I don't think those would be expansion teams because there's already a great number of 8 in the East. So maybe we would see a team relocate. Who knows? But yeah, if you go with expansion, you got to look out west. And I think you got to look at any of those cities that I just listed.
One thing I wanted to mention too is this league needs stability because it's not really good for the league long term to have teams relocate on a constant basis. So it's nice to have markets that are established.
And that's exactly what the new leadership with Brett Frood has made it evidently clear. He is more interested in the health of the current teams, the franchises that are in the league, rather than finding that, forcing a 16th team. He would rather make sure that all these other franchises are healthy and are thriving rather than just going out just so they can say they have 16 teams, 8 and 8 in each side. So that is something that's refreshing to hear. Nick Sakevich, the old commissioner, he did some really great things with this league, I will say. And I'm not going to knock that, but it just seems like the point of emphasis was a bit too much on expanding, getting new teams in the league, which some of them have been great. But some of the teams that maybe were struggling kind of got put on the back burner. So I think it's much better to establish, like you said, make sure those teams that are in the league, are thriving. They're strong markets. Make sure you got great arena deals. Make sure you have the right people in place to run those teams before just bringing in another franchise.
The one team I wanted to mention with you is, do you really think the New York Riptide long term can survive in New York City? There's so much to do in that city, so much competition with entertainment dollars. I just want your thoughts on the New York Riptide.
So luckily for the Riptide, they do play in Long Island, which isn't directly in the city. But with that being said, it's still a tough sell. They have not had great attendance this week, or last week, I should say, was a little better. I don't believe I saw the final number of what their attendance was, but it sounded like it was a much more energetic building. The thing, and you and I know, Chris, across all sports, winning helps sell. And I think this year and for years to come, they have a really good team. Are they going to make the playoffs this year? I don't know. They're going to compete, though. They really are. They have Jeff Teat, who is, in my personal opinion, a candidate for MVP this year in just his second season. He is a special player. When you think Jeff Teat, think Connor McDavid, think Nathan McKinnon. Like, he is a generational talent. That offense is going to be one of the most dynamic offense. They put up 14 against San Diego, who a lot of people, including myself, have as the top contender in the West. So if they can win, if they can prove that they're a team that is going to be competing night in, night out, I think there's an opportunity for growth. I think there is an opportunity there. I don't think they're ever going to be the Buffalo Bandits that has consistently over 11, 12, 13, 14,000 fans, or even a smaller niche market like a Halifax who hovers around that 8, 9K. Like, they might be a lower 6, 7, which if they can consistently have that, I think the league will be okay with it. If it's a strong fan base, a small but mighty fan base, I think they'll be okay with that. But there's no reason. Like, Long Island has a long history of lacrosse, whether it is box lacrosse or even field lacrosse. Like, there's no reason that they can't have 8 or 9,000 in that building night in and night out. And I think a playoff run certainly could help doing that next year. Like, if you're in the Long Island area and you're a lacrosse fan and you're not going to see Jeff Teat compete every single night, there's something wrong, because again, there's a lot of field lacrosse fans on Long Island. They just haven't been converted to box lacrosse fans. And Chris, in my personal opinion, I love field lacrosse. I played at the college level. I still watch it, but box lacrosse is just so much more entertaining.
I'm going to be honest. When I was growing up as a kid, I did not like the North American Soccer League, but they had an indoor version, indoor soccer, where
Yeah.
they played at Maple Leaf Gardens, the Odd in Buffalo, and I loved it. It was exciting, and I wish they would bring back indoor soccer, just like with indoor lacrosse. I love it.
Yeah, I do recall the indoor soccer leagues. Yeah, I know. I can't remember the team in Buffalo, but they
The
had a perennial
Buffalo
blizzard. Yeah, I
Blizzard,
think the Buffalo Blizzard. That's right.
or the Stallions, Buffalo Stallions.
Okay.
Is either
Yeah,
one of those two names.
it might have been two different franchises because
Yeah,
I definitely remember seeing the Blizzard. But yeah, and then it is a much more entertaining product in my personal opinion. Again, I like both disciplines of lacrosse, but it's just more fast paced. Like I feel like if you're a true lacrosse fan, you like field lacrosse because it's very strategic and it's there's a lot more like it's a slower game, but it's more of like a chess match. Whereas in box lacrosse, I heard you talk about it before and say this, but it's like a blend of hockey and basketball mixed together. Like I don't think people really realize how close it is to basketball. Like it obviously, you have the changes of offense and defense, but when you watch an offensive possession in lacrosse with the picks and the rolls, the screens, like a lot of the offenses that are designed in the game of lacrosse are very similar to what you see in basketball. So if you're a fan of basketball, there's no reason why you couldn't be a fan of the game of lacrosse.
absolutely. And this leads to this question, Pat. You've all obviously mentioned Saskatchewan and New York, but what other teams you think could surprise and improve upon last year's season?
Yeah, so obviously I won't need to go into it too much more, but definitely Saskatchewan and definitely New York from one team in the East and in the West. A team that, oh man, I had a lot of hope for them to start the season off stronger was Vancouver. I thought last year they started out hot. Mitch Jones was an MVP candidate. He goes down with injury. Their goaltending goes cold, and it really just kind of turned into a messy situation in Vancouver. They're a team that I want to hope they can improve their record and at least compete for a playoff spot. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs after watching them in Toronto? Probably not, but they didn't play an exhibition game in the preseason, which blew my mind. And they looked like a team that did not play an exhibition game last week. So they're a team that maybe could, but they're playing behind the eight ball. Certainly with their goaltending situation, they didn't go out and address after they lost Alex Bouquet, going in with a perennial backup in Steve Pryor, who has been a great backup. He's, he has shown at times that he can be a goalie in this league. He just hasn't shown it for a large sample size. Panthers City, they're a very intriguing team to me. They were on the outside looking in last year. They went on an absolute tear, winning, I think it was 8 or 9 games in a row at some points last year. They didn't make the playoffs, but they're a team that I think could improve on what was still a pretty impressive start to their season. In the East, I still think Halifax, I still think Buffalo and Toronto are your top 3 teams. Like I really do believe those teams. Doesn't matter. You can interchange those 3 teams. I think it's going to be Toronto, Buffalo, and Halifax in that order, but it wouldn't shock me if Buffalo finished first or Halifax finished first. Those 3 teams are going to be really, really good, and they're going to compete. The question is, who's going to get that 4th spot? Is it a team like the Riptide? Are they going to be that team that gets that 4th spot? Is it going to be Philadelphia, who finished in 5th but had that crossover spot? Or is it going to be Georgia? Do they bounce back? Do they improve on what was a disappointing season? They have Lyle Thompson, who is one of, if not the best player on the planet, whether it's the indoor or the outdoor game. Their goaltending is certainly a cause for concern. They got touched up pretty good, getting 16 scored against them. Craig Wendy, similar to what I was talking about with Steve Fryer, hasn't proven that he can be a legitimate number 1. So that is a cause for concern. And Albany, look at Albany, look at Rochester. Those are 2 teams that I think if you surveyed, 10 people across the league, whether they're fans or whether they're media folks, a lot of them had Albany and Rochester near the bottom of the East. But after the way they started, it wouldn't surprise me if they're one of those teams battling for that wild card spot to play the crossover for a team in the West. And it is unfortunate that, we have 8 and 7, 8 in the East, 7 in the West, and we still have that crossover game because I would have loved to see 4 and 4. Like, I think it would have made for a really interesting battle in the East. But again, hey, it just kind of goes to show you whoever that fifth team, the wild card team is going to be, if it's whether it's the fifth in the East or the fourth in the West, they're going to have to really earn that last playoff spot.
Same playoff format as last year, Pat?
Yes. So the only difference, which I'm actually pretty intrigued about, is so round one, it's a one and done. So if you lose, you're done. The conference finals will be at best 2 of 3, and the finals would be a best 2 out of 3. The only difference, it is going to be more of a compressed schedule. So instead of having game 1 on one weekend, game 2 on another weekend, game 3 on the following weekend, it's going to be compressed. So we might actually see, a finals have a game on a Friday, a game on a Sunday, and then the finals the following week, or possibly on the Monday of the Memorial Day weekend is when they will wrap up the season with at least game 1 and 2, which is awesome. Memorial Day weekend, big holiday in the States. It's an opportunity for, a lot of lacrosse fans, because that's also the NCAA men's Division 1, 2, and 3 finals, which is a huge event on ESPN. So you're going to have an opportunity where there's a lot of American lacrosse fans tuning into games during the day on ESPN. And then right after that game, the NLL game 1 or game 2 of the finals, accumulates there. Also, we talked about a little bit before, the Premier Lacrosse League, the PLL, the Professional Field Lacrosse League, they start after that weekend. So it allows for the NLL season to wrap up, and some of those players that play in both leagues, there won't be any conflicts, which is huge for the growth of the game of lacrosse. And there's also the World Field Lacrosse Championships for the men's this year in San Diego, which also condenses the season for the PLL this year. Like, they're going to have to pause because the World Championships going on, which will also be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. They're playing it in San Diego at Snapdragon Arena, stadium, the same stadium that we're going to see an outdoor game this year for the NL, which I'm super excited about. So if you're a lacrosse fan, it is a huge year for lacrosse with so many different events going on.
I was going to bring that up with you because my friend Patrick lives in San Diego, and he wanted me to mention that to you about the outdoor game against Vegas against San Diego. And how many fans do you expect for that game? And is TSN going to send you guys or a crew out there to cover that game?
Unfortunately not. It won't be a TSN game of the week. I was holding, fingers crossed that they were going to send us out, but no, they're going to have an ESPN crew out there, which is awesome. So the ESPN crew will do their game of the week from there. Having San Diego and Vegas there is great. It's going to have an opportunity for both newer franchises to promote themselves. They have the same ownership with Joe Tsai. Obviously, Vegas has a couple more different investors with Wayne Gretzky, Dustin Johnson, and Steve Nash, but it's allowing them to have a little more synergy between the two franchises, similar to like how Buffalo and Rochester are both owned by Pagula Sports and Entertainment. So that's also, they're bitter rivals, are going to be bitter rivals, but they have the same ownership, which is kind of a unique. But I'm excited for it. Like, I think this is awesome. In terms of how many fans I think are going to be there, oh man, I honestly don't even want to take a guess. San Diego, they draw okay for playoffs. They certainly get a lot more. If they can get to 12,000, I think that's awesome. If they can get over that, that would be amazing. And I don't know if they're going to kind of do what we've seen in years past with the Heritage Classic or the Winter Classic, where the arena's in the middle of the field, and then there's no seating around. Like, I don't know if they're going to build out seating, put temporary seating, or if everyone's going to be in the stadium seating. But man, if you are in San Diego and you're not even a lacrosse, if you're just a sports fan, one, you should be going to Seals games. I know their arena, Pechanga, is not in the best location. It's an old arena. It's tough to get to. They have a lot of Friday games. There's so much going on in Southern California. So I understand that, although shame on you if you're not going to some games. But if you're not going to that outdoor game, man, it is going to be a spectacle. They're going to put on a great show. And you can say you're part of history, being at one of the first games, of the first NLL game played outside. So I'm excited for it. Haven't checked my schedule to see if we have a TSN game or a Halifax game. If I've got the weekend off, I might have to cruise down to SoCal and check that game out.
I was just about to ask you that as well. And speaking of that, I'm going to wrap this up too, Pat. When is your next game for TSN, and which games do you really look forward to doing this year? Do you have a pre-schedule of games you're doing, or is it a week-by-week basis?
No, so I have my schedule set, and as we were talking off air, it is just the way that the schedule kind of works for the game of the week. It's a little bit of a slower start for me, as my next game's not until January 13th back in Halifax against Albany, but that's going to be a great game. Albany beat Halifax last year. Halifax really has a sour taste in their mouth, but we saw what Albany was able to do despite losing so many offensive pieces last year. They're a team that's going to compete. So that's my next TSN game. I know I have a couple of TSN.ca games following that. I think my first 5 games, Chris, are all in Halifax. I don't get to Hamilton until March 11th, I believe. Which,
wow.
Yeah. So it is pretty crazy. I get to go to Saskatchewan this year again, which I'm super pumped about. February 25th. It's going to be the Rush and the Warriors. So I'm super excited to get out to the SaskTel Center. That place is an unbelievable place to watch a lacrosse game. The fans in Rush Nation are diehards. They are very similar to Rider fans. Like, they love their Rush. They're passionate. They've packed that building every night. And if they can start winning games at the start of the year this year and get back to their winning ways, I'm not going to say they're going to be a dynasty again, but if they can start winning early on, I think their crowds are only going to get bigger and bigger out in Sask. Some other games I'm looking forward to. Friday, March 3rd, Buffalo at Halifax. I think that's going to be a great game. I'm really excited to see Buffalo in person. Believe it or not, I think I only see Buffalo twice this year during the regular season. I see them in Hamilton on April 1st. So that's another game I'm going to be circling on my calendar. Anytime you get Buffalo, Toronto, man, like, it is an unbelievable rivalry. In my personal opinion, it's the best rivalry in the NLL. Those two teams hate each other. And what we saw last year with Buffalo sweeping Toronto in the finals, it was the closest sweep I've ever seen in my life. Like, both games came down to the last possession. We saw one goal get called back in game 2 that allowed Buffalo to punch their ticket to the final. So I'm super stoked about that one. It's not a TSN game of the week game, Chris, but February 19th, it's a TSN.ca game. It's in Halifax. They're playing New York. I'm really excited to see that offense, to see Jeff T up close and personal. Saw him only once last year. Halifax did a great job. I think it was the only game he didn't have multi-points all season long as a rookie. Like, he had one of the best, if not the best, rookie season we ever seen in NLL history. And Graham Hossack and the Halifax Thunderbirds did a great job shutting him down. Just had an assist. So when he gets back in Halifax, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's the type of player that's going to remember that this is the only team that was able to slow me down. So I'm excited to see him. And I've got 15 games this year during the regular season. So I'm between TSN and TSN.ca. I'm super stoked. I'm so glad the NLL's back. I am a little bit jealous of Teddy Jenner and Brad Challoner and Chantel Chan, the West crew, that they have a ton of games to start the year. But we'll get back in the saddle on March and April. John, myself, and Ashley are going to be very, very busy bouncing back between Hamilton and Halifax, but wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Couple of my guests have been involved with the NLL, Renee Hamilton and
Yep.
Daniela Ponticelli. She loved her time with the Saskatchewan Rush, and I think she's gonna go back, come back and do some games for them possibly as well. She's a great guest too, by the way. I don't know. Have you ever had any dealings with her?
Just chatting with her on social media, never crossed paths, with her when I was in Saskatchewan before. But yeah, she does a great job, whether it's with the NLL or any of her work in youth sports. Her work when with Global, like she is fantastic at her job. And she's a great person as well. But she was one of the better sideline reporters that we had in the NLL when she was working with the Russian. You mentioned Renee Washington. Obviously, she worked with the NLL before, but she's now back doing some NLL content. She's working with the Daily Dive, so check that out. It's a daily show. I believe it's Monday to Friday. They do a live stream, so it's great to see more lacrosse content out there, whether it's their show with the Daily Dive. I've got a podcast with Teddy Jenner. You're starting to do more NLL content with interviews with folks like myself and John Gertler and others. So the more NLL content, and it doesn't have to just be TSN or ESPN. Some of the independent work that people do, the more content that's out there, the more opportunity for people to really sink their teeth into the game and really follow the game. Because with the NFL, every single day you can flip on the NFL Network or head on to Twitter or whatever it may be. There is a lot of content to be consumed. Same with the NHL, NBA, MLB, whatever it may be. But when it comes to NLL, there's not as much content out there. But the people that are putting out content are doing an unreal job.
And that's why I see so many similarities between the National Lacrosse League and the CFL as well. I'm trying to do as much content with the CFL as the National Lacrosse League. And I told one of the guys today, I'm now a season ticket holder for the Toronto Argonauts as of today.
Nice.
I said now that the CFL's taking a break until May, the National Lacrosse League will fill in for the CFL until the CFL comes back in May and June.
Oh, I love to hear that, Chris. I know. I'll be honest. Hadn't followed the CFL for really intently for the last few years, but this year started watching it a little bit more, went to the Grey Cup. I can promise you next summer, I will be heading down to BMO Field and watching a game because especially some of those playoff games, the atmosphere there looked great. And it's such a great location. There's no reason why people shouldn't be going. And I'm at fault. I didn't go to a game this year. I will be going to a game next year. So I'll have to hit you up and meet you for a cold one at the game because I'm excited to get back there and really take in because, going to games at the Rogers Center to watch a football game, even a baseball game, it's brutal. But, BMO Field, I know it's traditionally a soccer stadium, but it looks like an awesome place to watch football.
It is, and they the East Final. I took my nephew to his first ever CFL Argo game there, and he liked it not just for the beer factor, but the fact that there was 22,000 fans there. It wasn't completely sold out, but it was loud and noisy, and the stadium was rocking. And it's a great place to watch a football game, and it's the only place in Canada you'll see your grass fields as well.
Yes, and that is definitely a great point for sure. Yeah, I will be going to a game. You can hold me to that. I absolutely will be going.
And before I wrap this up, Pat, I'm going to wrap this up. I had to ask you this since you're a Bills fan. Quick thoughts on the Buffalo Bills now being without Von Miller for the rest of the year with a torn ACL.
Yeah, that's a tough loss. Von Miller was definitely a game changer. Just bringing a different dynamic to that defense. So that's certainly going to hurt. But I've heard you say this on your show or even on Twitter. It's all about the next man up, right? So, the Bills are going to have to find someone else to step in that role. Is it going to be an Ed Oliver? Well, I think it certainly has to be. So for me, yes, it is unfortunate, but injuries happen in sports. It's how you bounce back from these injuries. Who's going to step up? So definitely in the playoffs, I think he was going to be a game changer and bring a different dynamic to what the Bills were missing before. But at the end of the day, I think that, the inability to stop the run, the inability to run the ball, like those are issues that I think would plague the Bills more in the postseason. So I'm more concerned about how they're able to counteract some of those weaknesses that they have in their team rather than losing a key piece in Von Miller. Am I upset about it? Absolutely. I was hoping he was going to be back to the playoffs. He's not going to be. So next man up mentality. How are you going to bounce back? And I'm interested to see. And the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, Josh Allen eliminating the turnovers in the red zone, eliminating turnovers in general, maybe not trying to make that perfect pass, them committing to running the ball more. Those are things that I'm more positive of seeing. We'll see if they can do it later in the season and in the postseason. But certainly they're starting to, take away some of those concerns that and I know you mentioned it as well. Those were concerns in that middle part of the season that was making you really concerned about this Bills team. But I think they're on the right path of improving.
As long as I still feel they need to stay with that running game, because look at the Eagles, their offense can do it running with Hurts or Sanders or Scott, and then they have the receivers. Buffalo now, they can take some pressure off Josh Allen. I think I've been one of his critics and skeptics, and I think he's been doing too much. And I think having James Cook along with Devin Singletary, who's developed, gives them another threat. And I know a lot of Bills fans like the passing game and stuff, but in the playoffs and the weather gets bad, you need to be able to run the ball. And you can't have Josh Allen throw it 50 times and run it 30 times. He's a human being. He can only do so much. And I just think it would take a lot more pressure off of him as well by having a consistent running game.
Certainly it helps. And I think he has to be a part of that running game with some
Yes.
designed runs
Yes.
and they need to, because he is a freak athlete. He's a big body. Sometimes it scares me when he takes some of those hits, but you cannot just make him into a pocket passer. Like, he has to be that dynamic playmaker.
Absolutely.
But if you look at the last few games, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think in the last 4 games that they've or 3 games that they've won, he's been around that 30 attempts instead of 40, 50. I think against the Lions he had 42, but still it's not as pass heavy. And in the second half, Ken Dorsey was driving me nuts at the start of the year. They just neglected the run, and it was all pass. And the reason they were like blowing a lot of these big leads was because they continued to throw the ball. And the easiest way to kill clock in football is just run the ball, sacrifice a little bit of those big plays for just killing and chewing up the clock. So the play calling has been a lot better in the second half over the last few weeks. Yeah, I know they're playing some inferior opponents, but certainly I think they're on the right track to getting back to that dynamic offense, to getting back to a well-balanced team between the run and between the pass. I know it's turning into a pass-heavy league, but like you said, it playoff time, snow, wind, whatever it may be, you got to run the ball, and it can't just be in the first half. It's got to be the entire game. And I think they're doing a much better job. And you mentioned James Cook. That's a big part of it. He's looking really good in that offense.
Absolutely. And they're going to need him, because I feel they're going to have 5 games left. We're going to wrap this up, Pat, but there's one game I'm really looking forward to is seeing Buffalo at Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. The Bengals, who have been kind of counted out here this year, have been really playing good football. Chase is now back, and they have a tremendous team. And I really think that could be a possible preview of an AFC Championship game.
Yeah, you know what, Chris? Like, if I had to choose a team to play, and it's crazy that I'm going to say this with, what this team has been able to do in years past. If I had to choose for a team to play in the playoffs right now, if I'm the Bills, I'd rather play the Chiefs than the Bengals right now. Like, the Bengals are a team that is primed for playoff football. Do I want to play the Chiefs? Definitely not. But if I had to choose, I think I'd play the Chiefs, because the Bills have proven in the past they can compete. They beat them in the regular season. They haven't been able to beat them in the playoffs, but if Bills get the home field advantage against the Chiefs, I think they can beat them. I have a hard time believing that they can go into Arrowhead again and beat them twice in the same year. That's just so tough to do. If they can get home field advantage, I think they'll be at a much better spot. But with that being said, the Bengals, they can run the ball. Joe Burrow is an unbelievable talent. He's not going to put up the numbers that some of the other top quarterbacks in the league do, but when you need that big throw, when you need that big play, he's the guy time and time again, and that does it. And he just plays his best football when it matters the most. And that's in the playoffs. That's down the stretch. This is 2 years in a row now that they've been able to do this. They're healthy, like you mentioned, and their defense is supremely underrated. Their secondary is so good. What they were able to do to neutralize Patrick Mahomes, only allow 24 points against, like, that is impressive. I totally agree. That Monday nighter is going to be huge. And I think at that point, it could be make or break for the Bills for getting home field advantage. It could be a real a tone setter, like you said, because I know the Bengals kind of struggle at the start of the year, but as you and I know, it doesn't matter how you finish. Sure, it'd be great to get home field advantage, but you'd much rather be playing your best football leading into the postseason rather than starting out hot and fizzling like we're seeing some of these other teams in the league.
And that's what I want to see with the Eagles. 11-1 is nice, but I want to see the team continue to play well defensively, offensively, like they did against a very good Tennessee team. And that's how you want to go into the playoffs. It's not basically your, because sometimes best record in the regular season doesn't translate to playoff success. It's how you're playing when it matters. That's how you summed it up there, Pat.
Yeah, 100%. And I think these next few weeks will be huge for the Eagles. I think they already had their lull in the middle of the season where they're, just scraping by, beating some teams, that game against the Colts. But
yes,
I think they have, and, the game against the Packers, but, them taking on the Titans, who, are a little bit of an underrated team. I don't think they're a team that's going to make any noise in the playoffs, but they're a tough team to play against. It was just an absolute whooping. So I think the Eagles, if we can see a little bit more of that, their offense is absolutely dynamic. They're a team that's really fun to watch. I think they're a team that, in the playoffs, you definitely don't want to play them because they can run the ball. They can run the ball. Their defense is strong. So I think I agree with you. These next few weeks are going to be really telling of what type of team the Eagles truly are, because we know what they did at the start of the year. Can they finish strong is a big question mark. And I think they will. I really do. I believe this is a legitimate team. I think they're a powerhouse. They're going to be you look at the NFC East, the NFC, I don't know how many teams you can really say that are better than the Eagles right now.
And Jalen Hurts, he's really developed in his third year like Josh Allen. To me, there are so many similarities between both of them. Obviously, Allen's a little taller, a little stronger, but I really would love to see a Buffalo-Philadelphia Super Bowl because each team's defenses are going to have to deal with a quarterback that can fly out of the pocket as well. And Hurts has really become, to me, an elite quarterback.
Yeah, you know what, Chris? I as much as that would be entertaining to see, I don't know as a Bills fan if I want to see them in the Super Bowl, but certainly it would be an awesome game. It would be so much fun. I do think that when each team is playing to their best abilities, I think they are the two best teams in the NFL. I really do. And to speak of Jalen Hurts, I told you a few weeks ago, I know Patrick Mahomes right now is the betting favorite to be the MVP. But if I had a vote, I'd be saying it's Jalen Hurts. Like, I truly believe that this guy is, he has proven that he is a top quarterback in this league. He doesn't turn the ball over. He runs the ball well. And he's not a gadget quarterback. He's not a guy that's just going to hand the ball off a ton. His arm strength has improved. His touch has improved. And it just goes to show you add different weapons to a team, the quarterback is going to be a lot better. So as fun as that Super Bowl would be, Chris, I would be a little bit scared to go up against the Eagles, but man, that would be a fun game to watch.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap this up, Pat, but I'll definitely like to have you back again and talk maybe more National Football League. And obviously, definitely want to have you back before the NLL playoffs and do a playoff preview show as well on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I think this lacrosse season, it comes up fast. Like next thing you know, we're gonna blink our eyes, and it's gonna be right in
Gone.
the thick of playoffs. So, 100%, I would love to pop on again, whether it's previewing the playoffs, a midseason, whatever it is. You hit me up, Chris. I'm always down to talk about lacrosse.
And where can my audience follow you or find you on social media? And your website was Coolbet Canada as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're in Ontario, coolbet.ca, you can log on there, hit me up. I can help you get started with an account today. And if you want to hit me up, find me on Twitter at PGreggy, and on Instagram, you can follow me at PGreggy22. If you want to follow Coolbet, go to Coolbet. Like I said, coolbet.ca, or on our socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at Coolbet Canada. And again, if you're interested in lacrosse, if you're not too sure about the game, you want to become a new fan like Chris did, go to a game. If you're in the Hamilton GTA area, go to Hamilton. If you're in Buffalo, Western New York, check it out. Go to NLL.com. Follow them on all the socials. Or if you're sitting on your couch, flip on TSN pretty much every single week. There will be a game of the week. And the great part of it, if it isn't, and you have a cable provider, you can go on to tsn.ca and watch every single game, not just the games of the week. That is the beauty of the deal with TSN, or if you're in the States, ESPN Plus. So it's not just all about the game of the week. You can see every single game played in the National Lacrosse League, which is awesome. There's not too many leagues that you have access to every single game right at your fingertips.
That's awesome. And Pat, I was going to say, thank you for giving me a 90 minutes and 90 minutes of
No
your
worries.
time. And no, it went by quick. Honestly,
I know. I would not have guessed it's 90 minutes. So
90 minutes.
Again, anytime you want to have me on, Chris, to talk about lacrosse, talk about the Bills, whatever it is, I'd love to pop on. I think I hold the record for most appearances on Live with CDP. So I'm going to hold that title. I'm going to hold
Number
it
6.
as long as there you go. Super
Aaron
6. I love it.
Aaron Sanders, the voice of the Windsor Express, is at 5, and I think I'm going to have Aaron on soon to talk about the start of the National Basketball League of Canada as well. And he's a really good guy, and I hope one day he gets an opportunity with TSN or ESPN, because he has that it factor for broadcasting and the passion as well.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree. I've seen some of the shows that he's come on, and he's an absolute pro, and pretty awesome to see that league. Again, a league that I haven't followed, but I got to check it out, because it seems like they're taking strides in the right direction to grow that league properly. So I'll have to check out some games.
Absolutely. All right, Pat, I'm going to let you go. But again, thank you so much for coming on. Enjoy the Thursday night game. I'm picking the Raiders over the Rams. And I have the Bills over the Jets and the Eagles in a squeaker over the Giants, because I think Brian Dable's going to have that Giants team ready to play Sunday.
Yeah, well, the Giants are in must-win territory. They've kind of slid since their hot start, similar to what we were talking about. Some teams playing really well at the start of the season, slowing down. So, I think they got to come out and come out with a strong performance. I tend to agree, though. I would take the Eagles in that one, and I love hearing that you're picking the Bills as well. So go Bills, go Eagles. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the lacrosse games this weekend. 2 games on Friday, I think a couple of games on Saturday. So we'll finally be able to see the debut of the Las Vegas Desert Dogs on Friday night. I know I'll be tuning into that. But Chris, thank you so much for having me, man. I love coming on. Keep up the hard work. It's great to see all the great work that you're doing and all the strides that you're making. And it's pretty awesome to see, man.
Well, thank you so much, Pat. And you were one of the first guys to watch me and believe in me. And I really appreciate your friendship and some of the advice you've given me the last couple of years as well.
100%, Chris. I enjoy it as well. And again, anytime you need to have me on, I'd love to pop on here. And so again, Chris, thanks for having me. I really do. I love coming on these shows to talk a little lacrosse.
All right. Well, have a great night. Have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you before social media, but I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well.
Yes, you as well, Chris. Take care, buddy.
Thanks, Pat. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight, season 5, episode 3, with Pat Gregoire from Coolbet Canada, and he's also the TSN analyst on the Game of the Week, and also a color analyst with the Halifax Thunderbirds. And you guys can check out coolbet.ca as well. And if you want to follow Pat on Twitter at P Gregory. He is very active on Twitter as well. So check him out on his Twitter page and on Coolback Canada. And guys, I'm just going to show you guys a bit of a post-game interview I did with Ali Brady, the in-game arena host from the Buffalo Bandits on Saturday night after the Albany 11-10 win over Buffalo. Just one second. This is from my YouTube channel.
We have a long road ahead of us, so this is not a bad thing. Just to get the loss out of the way, and we'll continue on. So we played hard. There was a couple goals that were a little. I don't know if they called it right on the ref side, but yeah, we have a game coming up again, so we'll clean the slate.
How long have you been the in-game arena host for the Buffalo Bandits?
Oh, great question. This is my second season.
And what do you love about it the most?
There's nothing quite like an NLL game. The fans are so fun. It's loud, it's raucous. The game is fast, there's music. So it doesn't stop, which is great.
If somebody hasn't ever been to a lacrosse game, what would you say to them about attending a Bandits game or a game across the National Lacrosse League?
Yeah, I would say go. It's fun. It's unless you don't like sports, then you would have a terrible time. But it's affordable for the family. There's like even in our stadium or arena, we have seats anywhere from $15 to $55. So it's affordable for the family. Again, it's fun. It's only on a Friday or Saturday, so it works in everyone's schedule for the most part. Yeah, it's great.
2 last questions. What was your favorite moment from the Bandits season last year? And when is the next Buffalo Bandits game here at the KeyBank Center?
My favorite memory last year was when we secured our spot into the Eastern Conference when we got that title. And our next game is it the 27th or 28th? Is it the 30th? Everything blends in. Is it the Chris, you know
Yep.
it. Is it the 30th?
I believe it's the 27th.
Okay.
27th.
Yeah, you know how post holidays you just wipe all the memory away. So it's the 27th.
Have you always been a lacrosse fan?
Yes, I've always been a massive sports fan. Luckily I've been born and raised in Buffalo, and we have a great hockey team. We have a football team. We've had a soccer team back in the early 90s. Lacrosse, we had the Bandits since 1992. So I've always been around it, and especially a lot of high schools, they play lacrosse, and we have a big Indigenous community in Western New York. So it's around everywhere. So yeah, I've been a fan my whole life.
Last question, and I'm going to put you on the spot with this, Ellie. Will the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl this year? They're currently 9-3 after their win over the Patriots Thursday night.
I don't like to predict because I don't want to jinx anything. I don't think this is our year. I think there's too much pressure, but I think we're going to have extra football, if that makes sense. So if extra football leads us to an extra football game, wink, wink, then I'll be okay with that.
I was going to say, too, Josh Allen's got his own song, Allentown by Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Well, Jalen Hurts now has Hurts So Good by John Cougar Mellencamp.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see a Buffalo Philly Super Bowl. But, Ali, I'm going to let you go. But I want to say thank you so much for doing this interview after the game. I know it was a tough loss to a very good Albany team, 11-10. But I want to say it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for doing this. And I will post this video on my YouTube channel and social media pages when I get home tomorrow and get some sleep.
Safe journey home. I know you came from Canada, so enjoy.
And enjoy the coffee, Chris, too.
Thank you. I already had one.
Oh, good. Okay, well, thanks again, Ali, for doing this. Ali Brady, the in-game arena host for the Buffalo Bandits. Guys, we'll talk to you soon with Live with CDP Sports Talk. All right, guys, that was just a clip of my post-game interview with the in-game arena host for the Buffalo Bandits, Ali Brady as well. She's a huge Buffalo Bills, Sabres fan, and San Francisco Giants fan as well. And before I wrap up the show, guys, my next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, will be Friday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. My guest, Nikki Geist. She's the host of the Rush Hour podcast, the co-host of the New York Giants Rush podcast, co-host of the Third and 30 podcast, and a co-host of Channel Side Bets. And also, she's the New York Giants reporter for Jersey Sports News. So I hope you can tune in to my show tomorrow night with Nikki Gist for season 5, episode 4 at 6:30 p.m. live on my YouTube channel, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Twitch, and then obviously my 14 audio platforms as well. I'm really looking forward to speaking to Nikki about her podcast work and being a reporter for the Giants, and to preview the Philadelphia Eagles New York Giants game this Sunday at 1 o'clock at MetLife Stadium as well. So I hope you guys can all tune in tomorrow night to Live with CDP Sports Talk, 6:30 with Nikki Geist, season 5, episode 4, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, again live on my YouTube channel, Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn page as well. And I'm going to wrap this up very shortly, guys. But like I do with all my other podcasts, Live with CDP Sports Talk podcast, the audio version is downloaded to iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, Tuned In, and Podbean as well. And also, please check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP on TikTok as well. And again, Live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles. Or you guys can also now pre-order the all-electric Cadillac Lyriq or the all-electric Silverado as well. Give them a call at 519-824-0210 and tell them that Chris Palme, aka CDP, sent you as well. And also, guys, the parts and service department right now at Barry Cullen Chevrolet is open on Saturdays right now from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Just before Christmas as well, if you want to check that out as well. And I'm looking forward to my new vehicle. Hopefully we'll be here in either January, February, a 2023 Chevy Trailblazer I purchased from Barry Cullen. It's going to be white and black, and I will show it off here at some point as well. And that's about it, guys. Again, I'm just going to put this on the screen too. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is now live streamed on 5 platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And also, guys, in my interview with Ali Brady, I did make a mistake in that interview with Ali Brady. The next Buffalo Bandits home game is Friday, December 30th at 7:30 against the Halifax Thunderbirds. So the Bandits' next game is Friday, December 30th, 7:30 at the KeyBank Center against Halifax. You can get tickets at bandits.com as well. And the Bandits' next game is on the road on Saturday, December 17th at 7 o'clock, I believe, at the First Ontario Center against those Toronto Rock as well. Please check out the National Lacrosse League. Check out their website, nll.com. And it's a great league, and you'll really enjoy it and stuff like that. But again, I want to say thank you to Pat Gregoire from Quebec, Canada, and analyst with Halifax Thunderbirds and with TSN for coming on tonight. And thank you, everybody, for watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. And thank you to everybody listening this on my audio platforms as well. And again, I hope you guys can tune in to Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, tomorrow night, Friday, December 9th at 6:30 with Nikki Geist. She's a host of a Rush Hour podcast and Giants podcast in New York City. And she's also a Giants reporter for the New Jersey Sports News. So we're going to talk about her career as a podcaster and also the media work she does with New Jersey Sporting News as well, and preview that Giants-Eagles game. So I hope everybody has a great night. Enjoy the Thursday night game between the Raiders and Rams, and we'll see you guys here tomorrow for Season 5, Episode 4 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, again brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. Have a great night, everybody, and again, thank you for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk.